I built up like maybe like 10 or so thousand email subscribers, and consistently like in the coming months I would make like maybe $1,000 per email, something like that. Best way to do an agency is to only work with Fortune 500 companies. You need to have a business that has value. I didn't feel like the dropshipping thing was for me because there's nothing really proprietary around it.
Welcome to The First Sip, where we talk to cool people that do cool shit and try to learn a few things to help us build better businesses and healthier ones. Today, I had the pleasure of sitting down to talk to Eric Lam. He's the launcher and founder of Exploding Ideas, a newsletter with over 9,000 current subscribers. And he's also a multi-time founder across a multitude of other businesses. Today, you're going to learn why and how he selects businesses and operates in markets where he believes $1 million is going to be achievable extremely fast, why he thinks the agency model and agencies suck, and exactly how you could grow a newsletter to over 11,000 subs for free using his insane Reddit strategy. Enjoy. All right, so we're on with Eric here. Basically, like 8 months ago, I was scrolling through Twitter back in my degenerate Web3 days, and I came across this guy posting some pretty interesting stuff about the tools he was building. And I followed his journey all the way up until him basically building a newsletter from scratch for free using this awesome strategy, all the way up to almost 10,000 subscribers now. Is that right, Eric?
So I've surpassed 10,000, but I've combed my list a couple times, so I basically like cut people off. So now I'm like at like 9,300, something like that. But I think like all in all, like not net, but like gross, I'm like almost 11,000. So yeah, almost 10,000, almost 10,000. But I called the list.
Quality over quantity, basically, right?
Exactly.
So yeah. That's another thing we can dive into later on in the discussion. But the thing I wanted to really dive into, and I think is inspirational, is you've been really carving your own path through the business world. And I feel like I almost never see something come out from you that's, I saw a creator with 100,000 followers post this, 3 weeks ago, and now you're kind of recycling it. Almost everything you put out seems super unique, super original, and you're putting it in action and making it work. So how did you get to that point? How did you get to that point of kind of walking your own path? What gave you the confidence?
Well, I guess I've kind of been walking my own path for years up until this point. This isn't like I just like one day woke up and decided that I'm going to do this. I've had like other online businesses. For example, in some of my courses, I talk about them, like the free one where I do these case studies around them. One of them was called vocalpresets.com. That was like my first, like I would consider a successful business, and that it became profitable. It was like supporting my life, and it was like something that was bringing in like meaningful revenue. So yeah, I built the Reddit strategy basically around that because at the time I was working at a Fortune 500 company, and to be completely honest, I was making no money. I started there making $35,000 a year. So, and I'm living in Los Angeles. So for context, that's not enough to live. Like you need to drive Uber or you need to do something to supplement your income. And a lot of my coworkers were doing that, which is like surprising. You're basically living in like a 7-person apartment at that point, basically, grouping up with your buds, building businesses basically in the back alleys of LA. Is that kind of how it was at that income? More or less. But I was kind of just trying to figure it out on my own. Like I was living with some friends and I was doing just like data entries type stuff for this Fortune 500 company. This is my cat Levi in the background. Basically I was like, I need to make more money. It doesn't make sense to drive Uber or like do Postmates or anything like that, which some of my coworkers were doing. And I mean, it's great if that's what you want to do, but I figured like that's not building anything for myself. I have no equity in that. That is totally like based off of like the platform supply and demand. And it's just not a lifestyle that I think would be conducive to like building something bigger for myself. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to put time into something, then it needs to be something that's going to be worth it for me. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to read a lot of books and figure out like what other people have done, because I know like a lot of entrepreneurs that have become successful started from a very unsuccessful place, whether they grew up like not well off, or they hit like a roadblock and it made them like not in the financially best place and they had to figure it out. So I started reading a bunch of books and I was like, what did other people do? So I started realizing that, okay, like the first thing you need to do, like you need to have a business that has value, that brings value to people, that they want to buy things from you, and then you kind of like grow it over time. But it really starts with having something that is valuable. So I was like, okay, like I need to figure this out, whether it's a physical product or a digital product. And I just started going online and like looking at marketing videos, how people do drop shipping, that kind of stuff. And I didn't feel like the drop shipping thing was for me because there's nothing really proprietary around it. Like if you sell something from China, there's nothing proprietary around that. Somebody else can do that. They could undercut you, so they could charge a cheaper price, and maybe they can like figure out a better way to market it. So it's like you're just waiting for the day until somebody like kind of like
it almost
undermines your
entirely
business.
comes down to like brand positioning at that point, ad creatives, and you're almost fully commoditized, right?
100%.
I mean, you look at Hydro Flask, you can get 100 different Hydro Flasks with a different label on it, but the only thing that's keeping them at the top of the market is that basically all the people in LA around you are like, Hydro Flask is where it's at. You got to have a Hydro Flask or you're a poor bastard. So I hear you there. And, you know, I'm surprised you didn't want to go the Hermosi route, man. Grab that Uber, start stripping at night, make that 6 figures, pour it all into drop shipping ads.
Is that what
held you
Hermosi
back?
does?
That's the Hermosi path. Yeah.
Okay.
All he ever says is, if I ever screwed up and burnt out, I would just drive Uber during the day and strip at night. And hey, man, you got to monetize your skill sets. He's got great calves. Why not show him off?
I mean, whether he says he'll do that or will actually do that, I guess is a very different story.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, it seemed like the best way for me to go about it was to figure out how to build something online. And I'd seen people on Reddit, because I was already a Reddit user, trading these vocal presets back and forth. So people would say like, I have a vocal preset. Anybody want it? Or I need vocal presets. Can somebody send them to me? Here's my email. So I was like, wow, let me see if I could replicate this. So I went on Reddit and I was like, hey guys, like I have some vocal presets, give me your email and I'll send them to you. And I would get like 50 to 100 comments of people just dropping their email addresses. And for security issues, that's kind of unsafe, but it showed that there was some demand there and that people wanted it. So I was like, okay, let me see if I could kind of like take this to the next level a little bit. And I went to GoDaddy and I saw vocalpresets.com was available. Nobody bought it. And I was like, that's insane. Because like if I could just like brand my website as like the go-to website for this stuff, like Lightroom presets or something like that, you could find me in Google search really fast. And I feel like I could kind of be looked at as like the brand that created vocal presets. Kind of looking at it as the sole authority. So I kind of went through the steps, like one step at a time, and just kept posting on Reddit and built out my website. I hired a web developer for like $800, something like that, just using money that I had saved, because I was like, I needed to save anything that I can, even though I was making nothing. I was like, okay, I'm not going to go out this weekend, or I'm going to buy less groceries or whatever. I knew that I needed some money to like hire a web developer to build something on Shopify, because I needed to pay for this. I mean, nobody was going to do it for free, and I couldn't do it on my own because I wasn't good enough to be able to make something look really high quality, because you have to be able to convince people. And so I had this guy, I had the like vision of what I wanted to look like. He just kind of implemented it. I built the brand around it and everything, and then just started posting it on Reddit even more. And tons of people started coming to the website, giving me their email in exchange for a free vocal preset. I did the same thing on Facebook. It was honestly like even more successful on Facebook groups, like private Facebook groups that were built around music producers, where I would basically do the same thing. I would say, hey, I have some vocal presets. Anybody want them? Get like, I would wake up the next day, 150 comments of people dropping their email addresses. I would just copy and paste them into Shopify. And then he would auto send them the free vocal preset. Then after 3 months, I built up like maybe like 10 or so thousand email subscribers. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to see if I could charge for these things. So I would do pro bundles. So they were like, you would get the vocal preset, you would get an ad lib vocal preset, which is like background vocals. And then you would get maybe like a harmonizing vocal preset, or just like another vocal preset in there. So there were bundles of 3. And
so quickly walk, just for the audience, walk us through like, what's a vocal preset's value to a either producer or an artist? Like, what are they going to be using that for in their songs? Just quickly.
So I guess the persona that would be buying a vocal preset would be somebody that just bought GarageBand or Logic Pro, and they want to record their voice. They want to make a song like Travis Scott, or they want to make a song like Drake, and they want to sound like them, but they don't know how to be a recording engineer. They don't know how to do that. They've never done that. They just want that instant gratification. So with these vocal presets, what you do is you basically click and drag them into your like recording program, and it automatically loads it onto your voice, and you automatically get that as instant gratification. I basically set all the channel strip settings already. So there's reverb on it, compression, EQ, auto-tune, all that kind of stuff. It's already on it, and they could just click and drag, and then they could get to recording. So that was kind of the value proposition, instant gratification.
Okay, so that's super sick. And when it came to these groups, like I'm preaching that Facebook groups and any sort of niche group that you can either scrape or just, get involved in and post in are one of the best ways to start out and start accruing some leads. And also just testing offers. Like, I love that you went the free route. I love that you started building a list, offered something for free, identified whether or not it was valuable through that list, through interest. And then once you qualified everything, started looking to charge. So you're just telling me about how you kind of packaged it up and how you started charging for it. What was the path from that point on?
Once I started charging for it?
Yeah. So how did that go? How often? You said after 3 months, you sent out kind of a pro pack. Mm-hmm. How did that perform? Any learning experiences?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a slow build. You don't get like the instant like dopamine that I guess like people on Twitter are talking about, like, oh, I launched a course and I made $100,000. It was not like that. It was like the first time I put out because I would use the email as a distribution channel just to hit people. So I'll be like, hey, new vocal preset pro pack is out, and here's some tips on how to make your vocals sound better, but here's also this vocal preset bundle that you could buy as kind of like an upsell at the end of the email. And so I think on the first one I made like $800, something like that. So I recouped a lot of my costs, and then I would just send them like every week, like once every Sunday. And most of the emails I would do, like 3 out of 4 emails would be just like informational. So here's how to EQ your vocals. Here's how to compress your vocals. Here's how to do this, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then one of those emails out of the 4 would be an ad. So it would be like, here's some information to help you, but also like, here's the new pro bundle that dropped. So people would get used to opening the emails, and they would get value out of opening the emails. But every once in a while, I would advertise them through the emails. And consistently, like in the coming months, I would make like maybe $1,000 per email, something like that. So it became like something that could offer me like real money, if that makes sense. I mean, based off of what I was making. I was basically making the same amount doing that as I was working my job.
Which is insane. Do you think there was any carryover from your job to what you were doing with the vocal presets as well as the email marketing aspect of it? Because obviously email is a ton of data management, sorting lists, personalizing things. Did you think there was a lot of carryover there?
Like, did my job teach me things that informed how I run this other thing?
Exactly, yeah.
No. I think that
it didn't end up being helpful at all. Wow. Okay.
My job was, I loved working where I worked. It was really great. It was really fun. I learned so much, but in terms of what I was doing on a day-to-day, it was a waste of time. I'm going to be completely honest.
Wow.
It was like data entry. I was a temp there when I started, and I was literally just doing data entry stuff that like in the next 3 years, AI will just be able to do. Like, it was that easy. So yeah, I would say that I just was getting so stuck in my life that like I just needed to find some way out of it. And if anything, that was how it helped me. It made me so frustrated and so stuck, and like I wasn't going to accomplish anything, that I was forced to figure out another way, if that makes sense. Because I mean, once I got hired full time after the temp position, you get like capped, because that's how like a lot of Fortune 500 companies are. They're like, you can only get a 10% raise at the very max. Otherwise, you have to leave the company if you want anything more.
Things have changed now, though, in today's like super mobile tech market, where people are kind of like upping their salary for the same position just by consistently transferring companies. At least from what I'm seeing, supporting some hiring agencies through email. That is really funny, though, that you mentioned AI. So basically, your job was like a glorified AI-infused API endpoint that was connected to some sort of database where you're entering the data, but nowadays, literally ChatGPT plus an API endpoint would plug that right in.
It was a little bit more like the workflow was a little bit more proprietary than just tapping into like API endpoints. It was something
Okay.
that we had our own system that we were working in, but it was as simple as like looking for trends in the data that was like explicit. It was like they would say it would be something that said like sunshine in the data, and I would have to tag it as having the word sunshine in it. So it was like
Wow.
that simple. But yeah, it was just people in chairs doing that.
So it's funny that there was very little crossover, but one thing that stuck out to me that you said previously was that you read a bunch of books, but a lot of them ended up being on things like, drop shipping or what have you. Were there any books that really stuck out to you? Because it seems like you kind of ignored a lot of at least the ideas in terms of business ideas in the books, but was there anything beyond those business ideas that you took away?
So the books themselves were from like business moguls. They were from really big business people that have done like massive
Warren
things.
Buffett's of the world.
More or less. Yeah, like Sumner Redstone, like big media people like that. Just like really people that have like carved a huge path for themselves and they're like billionaires or whatever. So that was the books. So I wanted them to give me more of a foundational understanding of how business works and also how to dig out of a bad like starting point where you have no money or whatever it is. But
Yeah.
I watched a lot of YouTube videos and those were about drop shipping because I wanted to know how modern marketing and modern just business was done on the internet. Because a lot of these books, they're more traditional. They're from people that started their businesses 30 years ago, 40 years ago, whatever it is. So they're able to give you
whiskey in their basement, or, their mom's really good at crocheting, so they started selling some sort of product that their mom made. Yeah, stuff like that, right?
more or less. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it
That's
was
very
able
cool,
to give
though,
me
man.
like
Was it more like
Mhm.
Was it more like biographies though? Because I'm finding a lot of people are drawn to biographies because of that. It's from the come up and it's outside of that perspective of them being already a billionaire and talking about like what business takes now. Instead, it's like the little guy's story because that's what most people need, right? Not everyone's 100 millionaire trying to make it to a billion, right? So mostly biographies, yeah.
Yeah, basically all biographies. A couple that were business, like Blitzscaling by Reid Hoffman, but like I would say like 90% biographies and autobiographies.
Nice. I've been getting a lot more value out of biographies than random guru books because it's ideas that they stand the test of time as opposed to being something that's entirely based off of a trend going on for the last 5 years. So that's super awesome. So
I think to that point, like what you're
Yeah.
saying right now is really important for people to kind of know because like what you're feeling is true. I mean, you look at these guru books, they say they're not trying to sell you anything, and like Hormozy puts out his dollar book, but they are trying to sell you something. They're selling their image and they're selling their likability and your like relationship with them. So you are being sold something with a biography. You're also being sold something, but these people are at a point of their life where they're really just leaving a legacy at this point. So I'm kind of like a little less skeptical when I read those books. Yeah, I think in a lot of them, they pump themselves up and they try to like cover their tracks a little bit to make it like, oh, I did great things. And like most of my, the things that I did were successes. But I think that it's a little bit easier to read through the lines and you're going to get a little less like manipulated, I think, when you read biographies and autobiographies than if you read guru books, which guru books are also great. But I think you have to go into them with a little bit of being skeptical.
I think they can be great. They're just less likely to be great. And I think to that point, like, be very mindful of any guru book that doesn't mention failures, right? Because literally every single business owner, anyone that embarks on this entrepreneurial journey is going to encounter a ton of failures.
100%.
Even in the last 3 years, I've had like 4 or 5 crazy ups and downs, swings in revenue, pivots, etc. And I talk about them all the time, but it's important to know the thing that lasts the test of time though is the skill sets that you build and how much longevity those skill sets have. And I think that's why it can be a bit more beneficial to look at old school books. And this is just the Lindy effect in action. I don't know if you're a big Nassim Taleb guy, but he talks a lot about probability. He's one of the leading experts. And the Lindy effect is basically this. The longer something has been around, the more likely it is to be around for a longer period of time. And these books that have been around for 3 years, maybe they're applicable, but those ideas are unlikely to stand the test of time. So yeah, I'm glad you paused to hone in on that point because I think it's really, really valuable. But kind of going back to the topic at hand. So you managed to scale this up to, you're saying, around $1,000 every time you sent out an email. I imagine that's an email with a call to action. There's one question first, and this is a small question, and that's, when you do call to actions, one thing I've noticed is that your call to actions are extremely subtle. What led you down the road of kind of subtle call to actions? Because I've seen examples of even your Reddit stuff, and you're almost plugging another business sometimes into it with your business. One, I imagine, to raise authority, but like, what's the intent behind that? And what led you down that road? Because I think there's very few people that avoid or go down the path of not being direct to consumer in their call to actions.
So I guess with Reddit specifically, or like online forums, if you're really clear about your call to action and trying to push people into whatever you're doing, you look like a shill in your advertising. In those kinds of communities, whether it be Reddit, Facebook groups, you can't look like a shill. Like, you're not supposed to look like you're blatantly advertising. I mean, that's not allowed in these communities, and it's frowned upon. Also, it's just like a bad user experience, because people in these communities, they're there to share information. So I want to just be as native as possible, and I want to like help people, really. So I give a lot of my value in the post itself. They don't have to click the links. They're just there as additional resources. Kind of like if you and I were talking, or it was like a recommendation to a friend, you know what I mean? Like, check this out, it helped me, but like, here's the value that you actually want in the bed of the, or in the body of the post or the comment itself. So yeah, I'm just trying to act like a friend, more or less, and like native to the community, because I was already in Reddit for a while. I was already using it, and that's just how people interact. They don't push products like, go check this out. That's just like not native. That's native for like a Facebook ad, but this is not an ad. This is more like subtle marketing, like organic. And you have to act differently. You have to engage differently, or people don't want to see it because they're not there to read ads. You know what I mean? They're there to engage with each other. So you want to blend in. You want to do exactly what other people are doing.
I think that's a fantastic point. You need to fit your call to actions to the platform you're interacting on, because the less an ad can be perceived as an ad, the more likely it is to be successful, right? Kind of like a first principles kind of thing.
It was exactly what was happening with like the companies that were getting really big on Instagram. Like, I don't know if you know Greta Van Riel, I think her name is. She has a company called Skinny Me Tea, and she built a bunch of businesses that were basically native to Instagram, where she built up these Instagram profiles that had like really pretty pictures and aesthetically pleasing pictures, and then she built products around them. So for example, Skinny Me Tea was a tea brand that she built off of Instagram, and she built this like tea page basically, and it had like a lot of like pretty pictures of the ingredients and like tea ingredients, stuff like that, like organic, all natural, that kind of stuff. And then she launched her tea brand, and it's just like being native to the platform, sharing things that people want to see. People were sharing her pictures, and she did the same thing with like this diffuser bottle, which was like, I don't remember what it was called, but it was this pretty looking like diffuser bottle that she was posting pictures around. She was posting fruits and stuff on the Instagram page. People really liked the pictures that she was sharing. They would share them, they would like them, they would comment on them, and then she launched a brand on top of it. And it's the same exact thing, but it's just with a different platform in kind of a native way that Reddit works.
Yeah, you're already interacting with the subreddit, you had an interest in this topic, and then all of a sudden you're like, why not build a newsletter around it, or not? Why not build a product around it? And
100%.
I've actually, especially around AI, I've seen a lot of people employing this strategy where they launch a brand, they post about AI, they're an AI news feed basically. They then slowly integrate their personal image into it once they've built out some social presence, and they start, actually posting videos with their face behind it. And then finally, all of a sudden, you check their link in bio after 50,000 followers are built up, and they're launching their own AI. Right? Kind of taking everything, coalescing it together. You already have the audience. Now you can launch the product. And as long as you're not shilling all the time, it can be a pretty successful formula. So I love that. 100%. When it comes down to, that path you took to finally leave that, what sounds like the worst job in the world, to be honest, you got absolutely nothing out of it. At least some of the other people on, X I talked to that are trying to start their entrepreneurial journey, they at least are a writer at a business or a blogger at a business or are building some sort of niche skill that they can eventually monetize. So it's pretty cool that you ended up having to completely pivot and walk your own path. On that path, making that $1,000 per email, what was the moment and what are the kind of criteria that you set out before you finally left that job?
So I guess there's been a great deal of time between that job and where I am now. I I was working at a temp at that company. Then I got hired full time at that company. And then I wrote a business proposal around an idea that I had, kind of like entrepreneurial, to like work on internally, where we took one of our distribution channels and kind of like looked at it in a different way. Not going to go like so into it, but pitched it to the CEO and built a small team around it. And she funded the idea. At that point, I broke off from like doing all the data entry type stuff, and I got moved into the business affairs department to basically do market research. And I did market research for 2 years on the industry, where I would find gaps and we would learn how to like exploit them basically. And we pursued a bunch of business ideas through that. So that was where I learned how to do market research. And then I left there and I went to go work at a venture capital firm. And I did that for about a year. And then I went to go run strategy. I was head of strategy at a startup. And then I quit to go work for myself full time.
Once you kind of got out of that analyst role, you're able to secure another job that was actually applicable to build some skill sets that could be used for anything in the future. So I love the idea of working at a company to basically learn skills while getting paid for it. I think that is like dramatically underrated, but of course you need to find yourself in the right position, the right circumstance where you can express some creative freedom. So what did that look like, man? What was the velocity of that market research? How often were you pushing a product? How often were you iterating? What did that look like once you're in that position?
It was kind of like, it was a new position. They created it for me. So it was like
badass.
Ad hoc. It was like, they just said, okay, whenever you have an idea, do a lot of research and then just present it to us, meaning the executive team. My boss was the chief counsel. And they were like, yeah, like just present it to us and we'll kind of go from there. If we want to do it, we'll do it. If not, then we won't. And so it was basically like, whenever I found something that was interesting, usually it was every few months, I would bring in a couple ideas. Some of them were like a paragraph long. Some of them were like a couple pages long, depending on what I foresaw being like the intricacies on how to pursue them. Some of them were more like industry based, so something that a consumer would never see, but they were more just messing with like kind of like loopholes in the law. Some of them were more consumer based, where they were like apps and stuff like that, like on Amazon and like the Alexa devices, stuff like that. So they really varied. It was just open, like, what ideas do you see? What gaps are there in the market? And just whenever you can, just bring us ideas. So I did that for like 2 years, and it was just, I would come into work every day and I would just kind of like figure it out. It was like, okay, do I have something I'm currently working on? No. Well, do I see any ideas? No. Well, go research. You know what I mean? It was just kind of like figuring it out every day. And when I would find something, I would pitch it internally and craft like a really like dense proposal around it that would be like, here's why it benefits us. Here's why it benefits the people that we're either selling to or we are like what we're doing in the market. Because if it was like a legal thing, then we're just adjusting some things internally. So it would be like, what are all the different like sides to it? Like, what do we have to do? What do the people on the other side have to do? Like, how does this change the dynamics of the market? So it was like, some things were selling, some things were not. In terms of like, our goal wasn't always to sell something. Sometimes it was just adjusting our strategies internally around something to make more money, if that makes sense. So yeah, it was really just every day was different, and I just kind of figured it out. But it came from a creative place.
That makes a ton of sense, man. And I think, I mean, one, that's a really fortunate opportunity, but you can really see the parallel between what you were doing day to day, even from this position all the way up until working for a VC, your newsletter, exploding ideas, finding trends, finding business ideas that look lucrative based on current data, whether it's Google Analytics, whether it's an exploding keyword. Like, you can very clearly map, you know, what I presume is one of your current best businesses right now, which is the newsletter. I can't know for sure because you're very private about sharing too much information when you're launching something. I know you also have like this crazy SEO page that's been generating you leads for a new business idea that you haven't quite launched yet, which we can get into later. But like, I think there's carryover there and something for the audience. And that's, you have a skill set that is likely monetizable. You just haven't figured out how to monetize it yet. So you got to grow the skill set over 3 years. And it wasn't until 4 or 5 years later from the inception of that skill set until you launched Exploding Ideas, right?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, that was one thing, like when I worked in venture capital, it was like, why are you the best person to pursue what you're pursuing? That was always our question to people. Like, okay, you're building this API business or whatever it is. Like, why are you the one to do it? Did you like do this at like Amazon Web Services or something? Like, do you have like really dense understanding of how this market works and you're going to fix a problem that you understand? Why are you going to win? You know what I mean? And why are you the one to do this? So that was like, that's always my logic going into things. And with Exploding Ideas, it's like, I've done this for a Fortune 500 company. I've done this for myself where I have a couple businesses and I just love doing research. It's something that I've always loved and I love learning. So I just kind of like, this is an outlet for me to just put it out for people because I love doing this research and I'm going to do it whether I put it out or not. So read it, don't. But like, I think that it's really fun for me and I've historically always done it and it's helped me like build a couple different businesses. So yeah, I'm just like, you can read it and I can't pursue every idea. So if you want to pursue one of them, go for it kind of thing. You know what I mean? I just want to like do research, put them out in the world and just see what happens. I just like being creative and learning.
I mean, that's incredibly rewarding too, because there's definitely going to be cases of people coming back to you and saying that they tried the idea and they found success, right? So a really cool way to make something that you have fun doing hugely impactful, but also, at the end of the day, you're also growing an audience with a ton of social proof behind you simultaneously. And, you have the Sahil Blooms of the world that, they just post value nonstop. And now they have a portfolio of $10 million worth of businesses behind them. So, I mean, I think it's a great pathway where you're getting to benefit the many and monetize off of the few, which I love. And actually, that's why I am kind of obsessed with your Reddit strategy in general. I just haven't really figured out how to apply it to any of my current businesses. I think it's, basically anytime someone comes to me, Eric, that wants to launch a newsletter or wants to launch anything creative, the first place I direct them to you is you. And
that's awesome.
Like,
Thank you.
It's like the number one thing. I'm like, this is the place you can go where, you have your free course, maybe they can pay a little bit of money for a little extra support, whatever it is. And they can get so much bang for your buck. And the proof is in the pudding. You're not just a guru recycling ideas. You have a newsletter that exploded as a result of it. And, you have various other businesses that I don't know if you're using the Reddit strategy for, but I know you did grow another newsletter with this strategy as well. So that kind of leads me to another point here, which is, where do you think this strategy is applicable, right? Like what types of offers can it be used on? Because I think a subscriber is really low friction, but obviously like if you're a business that needs a call to make something happen, like can you really use this Reddit strategy? I imagine digital products are great, low friction, sales are great that don't require sales calls. Like where do you see it applicable for people?
So I guess I can hopefully like sort this out for anybody looking to use the Reddit strategy. I can like sum it up pretty quickly. It's all about like having something that has product market fit, which I don't know if everybody like understands what product market fit but it's something
Walk
that
them
like,
through it, man.
So it's really, I mean, at the simplest level, it's just something that people want, like something that has demand behind it. Like people actually want this thing that you have. So it's not like, okay, like I'm pursuing this because I'm passionate about it and I'm going to put it out in the world. It's like, I see this demand in the market and I'm going to fill it. So it's more taking that perspective. So Reddit strategy works on anything that fits that. And I think any business really that's built around that is really what will put you on a path to something that's actually going to work. So yeah, that's really how I pursue everything. I don't know. Was that the original question?
No, I think you actually nailed it. In that it is pretty universal. But do you think you can really lead someone down, a direct funnel where it's like, have a chat with me, or can you lead someone to like a sales letter style page or a VSL? Or do you think it's more so that you need to lead them to something free to sign up for and upsell them later? What's your opinion?
I think it's best to lead them to something free to sign up for, and then they buy something later after you've developed, like you've warmed up that contact. So like over time, presenting the value. I think that really like you could sell anything really, but it needs to have that product market fit aspect. I think a lot of people, they think there's a demand around something where there's really not. And I'll just give an example. There's a lot of people that during the AI hype, they were really hyped on this AI automation agency thing, where that was really big on YouTube. People were talking about it a lot, all these big YouTubers. There's really not much demand around that. The people that are getting demand, yeah, which he's great. I think he's so entertaining. He's awesome. But let's be real. The people that are absorbing all that value are those YouTubers. So if somebody's going to reach out and they want an AI automation agency, they're going to that YouTuber or one of the YouTubers that have already demonstrated their value. It's the same thing as like when I've consulted with SEO people in the past. I have a tendency to contact the people that I've seen on YouTube that have like proved that they know what they're talking about, and I've implemented some of their strategies and I've like gotten some results from them. Now I trust them through their free content that they've given me. Now I'm going to hire them for a consultation call. So they are going to absorb all that value. Same thing with like, you look at ghostwriting. I think his name is Alex Leibowitz, the Morning Brew guy. He has a company around that. Who do you think's absorbing all the value? He's already sold Morning Brew, and now he's promoting this thing on Twitter. He's going to absorb that value. Some random guy that is doing this isn't going to, because they have no authority in that space. And I think that's really like it's like you have to have authority in some of these things to absorb the value that you want to absorb. You can't just pursue it. So I think that's one aspect of it. Another thing is like, you don't want to pursue something that's a commodity. So something that, for example, video editing, I think, or not, maybe not video editing, but I think that there's some like aspects that are kind of commoditized where you need to build an authority around what you're doing to stand out in the market. And I think with these low-hanging fruit type things that are like low barrier to entry, that is kind of where it is. You have to build authority around it, and then you can monetize it. So I think that some people will go to Reddit, they'll try to promote like their AI automation agency or whatever it is, but why do I trust you? Like, tell me why. Most of them can't answer that. They're just like, well, I know Zapier, I know how to use make.com or whatever, and it's like, great, so do 1 million people on Fiverr. Why do I hire you? And it really comes down to the people who are killing it in that space are on YouTube, and they're putting out free content. They're showing you how it's applicable. And then the people that are interested in that kind of stuff, they're going to hire them off YouTube. So I don't think that those things are best for Reddit. I think that maybe a different strategy would be best for Reddit if you're going to pursue that type of business, or put out something that's got a little bit more like grit to it, like something that people really want, something that's not going to be a hard sell, or you're not selling your maybe like expertise around, but something that's more productized. I don't know. I just think different products and strategies do better on Reddit. I think that some people try to apply this like YouTube strategy or like Twitter strategy and apply it to Reddit, and it's not really the same. It's just a little different. And I think that also people sometimes are pursuing the wrong things. So
there's a couple things there that I want to give some pushback on, and then there's one thing that when it comes to the Reddit strategy, just to boil it down into brass tacks, because you went on a pretty long you gave a pretty long answer there.
Yeah.
If you were to boil it down, basically the Reddit strategy is effective when you're leading with value. Mm-hmm. Your call to action is something free.
Yep.
And your goal is nurturing before the sale, and you have a more long-term vision. You're not someone starving to make a sale right now.
100%.
But is that kind of boiling it down?
Really well said. Yeah.
Okay, exactly perfect. The thing I want to give a little bit of pushback on, and I think it's just also to help the audience not have such doom and gloom around potentially being a ghostwriter. But I think it doesn't necessarily entirely come down to having to fully differentiate yourself in the sense that you were saying. I think the place that you can potentially differentiate yourself and build that authority without being that YouTuber, without being that Liam Otley that's absorbing the market, or Nicholas Cole, for instance, on the ghostwriting side as well. You mentioned the founder of Morning Brew, but Nicholas Cole would be another big one. Is taking the time to actually understand a really, really niche segment of the market. And if you lead them down to a call to action, because this is what I'm all about, taking someone from cold to hot through cold email. And it's basically this, man. It comes down to positioning yourself super well, creating very, very niche sales resources that are basically giving away all the value you can imagine for free. And you're going a step beyond targeting someone that is aware of their problem and trying to solve it. Because if they're aware of their problem and trying to solve it, and they're sharp enough, they will probably go to a YouTuber. But if they're aware of their problem, but not entirely aware of how to go about solving it, and you can come in and say, hey, man, I know you're an SEO agency, and as a result, I had this automation for onboarding new clients that's going to XYZ, 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 and I'm going to run you through exactly how it works. Oh, wow. This guy knows what he's talking about, right? So if you can serve people that may not be in the market quite yet, but are on the verge of being in the market, I think you can snipe some clientele before other people show up or before they pursue a consultant like yourself.
Hey,
would you agree with that?
Yeah, and to your point, I have nothing against ghostwriters. Just FYI, I have nothing against people that are doing AI
I rip
automation
on that community
agencies.
all the time too, man. I'm not going to lie.
I guess I was using it as an example more so than anything else because I don't know a ton about that community. I've just seen them on Twitter, really, and that's it. And I've seen them on Reddit a little bit, but I really have nothing against them, to be completely honest. It was just kind of like an example. But yeah, it's all a perspective. I guess like at the end of the day, I look at it like if you're going to go into a business line, I guess this is my perspective too. Like just putting that out there, it's not everybody buys into this, but I want to go into an opportunity where there are not like 10 millionaires, but there's a lot of millionaires. For example, you look at the NBA, there are a lot of people that want to play basketball, but there's very few people that actually play basketball professionally. Same thing with referees. There's a lot of people that want to be referees. There's a few people that do it professionally. Same thing with musicians. There's a lot of people that want to
and corrupted, and I'm just kidding.
But like, I guess there's a lot of musicians, but there's very few that are making millions, comparatively to how many people are actually pursuing it. So I guess if I'm going to pursue something, I want to make sure there's a high likelihood that I'm going to make a good amount of money and not be like pressed with headwinds where it's extremely difficult. So I just see like some of those types of businesses as being difficult to make money, where, yeah, you can make some money. Maybe you can make, I don't know what it is, but I just want to make sure that the path to making $1 million a year is not going to be like impossible, or just the cards are not going to be so heavily stacked against me, where if I pursued something else, then it would be a lot more feasible and a lot easier. So, but that's just my mindset of how I go into opportunities. Obviously, there's people that pursue a ton of things that they're happy with making whatever they're making, but that's just my perspective that I bring to it.
Yeah, I think a big factor is just doing what you like, and I think a lot of people like the idea of writing. On the ghostwriting front, I do agree with you, though, man. Like most people are going to go the route, especially a high net worth individual that you're going to be able to, potentially charge a really high ticket price to, in exchange for that quality, consistency, what have you, the results that are backing you up. But just to say that if you're a ghostwriter, yes, it's saturated for sure. And yes, there's a ton of competition, but there is still hope to getting some clientele. I just wanted to give that hope back out there. But
100%.
I would say, man, I brought you on here just for those perspectives exactly, and to give people a new kind of frame of mind, because I think people are struggling to, one, position themselves with their skill set, and two, grow out of just following trends, right? Because if you have a trend that there's a guy that, like you said earlier, a guru that put out a course and apparently made $100,000 in the blink of an eye. That means there's a ton of people following that course that's to do exactly the thing that they already did, but they did it 4 years ago. So is that the best business to jump into? Maybe, maybe not, right?
Yeah, totally. I've kind of like fallen down the rabbit hole, definitely, with like YouTube and like following these things like over the years. And I just find that it pans out the best for the person that's putting out the information. It's not the best for everybody else. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, man.
I mean, is what it is. But I mean, with a lot of that stuff, I'm just like, okay, I'll take it with a grain of salt. I'll learn from it what I can, but I'm not necessarily going to pursue exactly what they're doing. I'm going to take what they're doing and maybe try to apply it to something that I'm doing. For example, like, yeah, I mean, like, for example, I just bought Pat Wall's, his SEO course, which is he did Starter Story, and he has a popular YouTube channel, but also a popular website. And I didn't take that course with the idea that I'm going to go create an SEO agency. You know what I mean? I took the course just seeing what can I learn from it. Can I apply any of this stuff to my businesses and give them an edge? Because I mean, some of them, like one of them, for example, is in commercial real estate. I'm like, can I use any of this information and give that business even more of an edge than maybe it already has to bolster its edge? But I'm not necessarily going to businesses like, hey, I can do SEO for you, or that kind of stuff. It's a little bit less direct. It's a little bit more indirect the way that I'm applying it, if that makes sense. I'm not going and trying to create a business around it. I'm just like applying it to the things that I'm doing. So that's usually the perspective that I take on really any course that I take.
Well, here's the
For what it's
thing. I
worth.
mean, I think that's a great point, first of all, because anytime you pick up a marketing skill, it's going to be 1,000 times easier for you to apply it to your own businesses than it's going to be to apply it to other businesses. And I think that's one small thing that a lot of people don't consider when they start a service-based business, is that fulfilling for yourself and fulfilling for others is an entirely different ballgame, because there are so many little intangibles that you were doing to fulfill for yourself that your client may not be willing to do for their business, unfortunately. Even though you would expect someone to be all in on transforming their business, that can be a huge point of friction for a service-based business where you almost have to hold your client's hand through the process. And at that point, wouldn't it just be better to apply that to, a business, like you said, that has great market research behind it? Maybe it's a bit more nuanced, but you can take these marketing skills and really propel it forward in a variety of ways. And, that leads me to another point, which is there's so much out there about X is dead, you need to be doing Y. For instance, cold DMing is dead, you need to be doing the Reddit strategy, which I would never hear you say. And I think that's because we both understand that marketing is just marketing. You should do whatever is working for you and try whatever you can. Would you agree?
100%. Totally. Yeah.
Perfect. So
yeah.
I guess to kind of segue away from this point, I made a post about us meeting today. And again, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having
early
me.
stages, just trying out the whole podcast game.
Love it.
And, you've been super, super interesting to talk to. And I had no idea just how rich some of your background was, especially on the market research side of things. So it's a pleasure to get to know that. A lot of people were asking on that post, if you were to launch a newsletter today, first of all, how do you find a topic? And then second of all, when you apply it to Reddit, what's your workflow, man? I know you have a course and maybe you can direct people to that as well. And by the way, everyone, that course is completely free because Eric's an absolute G. But, walk us through it in layman's terms. Topic to launch to even grooming the list. What are kind of the triggers there? So
the newsletter, how I started this newsletter, is exactly how I pursued really every business that I've pursued. It's just like finding a gap or a need in the market and fulfilling it. So with Exploding Ideas, I can kind of explain through example. Basically, at the beginning of the year, I saw the market turning a little bit and people were starting to get laid off from their jobs. The bank run stuff was starting to happen. There's a lot of fear in the market. And so I figured there could be opportunity for like a side hustle newsletter with really deep research to basically give these people an outlet, because maybe they don't have a job anymore or they're scared to lose their job. So they're looking to diversify their income sources. So I think that there would be opportunity around maybe creating something that's in that side hustle niche. And I was a Trends, or I still am a Trends.co subscriber. And they basically every Tuesday, it's like a few $100s a year, and they put out like high level, like a couple different business ideas, and they'll give like a couple paragraphs about it. I was always a little bit like there could be more here. And when I go and I start a business, I need it to have a lot denser research behind it. I need to know where the SEO opportunity is. I need to know like why there's an opportunity in the market. Is this a flash in the pan or is it a long-term thing? So that's research I do on my own. So I was like, okay, I could take kind of like the high level of what they're doing, but instead my differentiator will be it's a deep dive. So I'm differentiated in the market through that. And also I'm catered towards something that's like got some demand in the market because people are looking to diversify their income streams. So that was my theory. And I saw people talking about it a lot on Reddit. This is all before I even like built a brand. I had put out a newsletter or anything like that. So then I was like, okay, I see people talking about this kind of stuff, like how to build side hustles, how to generate more passive income, that kind of stuff is having an uptick on Reddit. Let me see if I could just build a landing page and see if I can get people to sign up for it. And if I can get like a few hundred subscribers, maybe, or 100 subscribers in a few days, then maybe it'll be worth me pursuing. So posted it on Reddit a couple times, and within like first like 24 or 48 hours, I had 200 subscribers. And I was like, okay, like there's something here. Like people are obviously interested in this. And I was just kind of like making comments on Reddit, like trends.co is like a good newsletter that's like helped me like build businesses in the past. Also, there's this new thing called Exploding Ideas, kind of like subtle and like telling to a friend, but giving a lot of like advice to people asking for advice in their posts, where it's like, how do I build a side hustle? And I'll go into detail and then plug a couple newsletters. And so I just saw like a bunch of people are subscribing. So I'm like, okay, let me see if like in the next like 10 to 12 days, I can get over 1,000 subscribers. So I did that. And this is like basically before I think I even sent one newsletter. I had like hundreds of subscribers. And so when I hit the 10-day or 12-day mark, whatever it was, I had over 1,000 subscribers. And I was like, okay, is this something that I'm interested in? Is this something that I would put a lot of effort into over a long period of time? Because like it's kind of like a J-curve business, which is something that is not going to make much money at the start, but will take a lot of like basically effort to get the ball rolling and then to start making substantial revenue. But
extreme long-term gratification for sure.
Yeah, 100%. So I was like, okay, well, I feel like for this specifically, there is momentum around it, but also due to my past experience, basically doing the market research and stuff like that, and just building my own businesses, this could be something that I could put a lot of time into and I would be the right fit for it. And I would also build myself as an authority in that space, which could lead to other opportunities. So at the end of it, I decided, okay, this is something that would be interesting for me to pursue. And that was after I had 1,000 subscribers. And so, yeah, that's my process for everything. It's always like, is there a need in the market? Okay, how can I make this different than the other things in the market? Okay, are people on Reddit talking about this? No. Well, people on Twitter talking about this? No, yes, then pursue Twitter. No, then go look for something else. Well, Facebook. Are people talking about this in Facebook groups? Yes, okay, post in Facebook groups. No, well, then go look somewhere else. On Instagram. Are people talking about this? It's like really just a trial and error iteration strategy.
Noticing you did mention Quora. I feel like Quora and Reddit kind of have some crossover, no?
Yeah, I feel like Quora is kind of dead, to be completely honest, personally. I haven't really found much success on Quora. Maybe there's a Quora person out there that can help me, but yeah, I've tried Quora and I've had way better ROI on Reddit, so I find it's just a better use of my time. So,
perfect.
I mean, I know that in the eyes of like people online, they're very similar. They're kind of analogous to one another, but I have not had much success on Quora over the years. I mean, I've had things that got hundreds of views, but never something that got over 100,000 views. And on Reddit, I've had that multiple times. So take that for what you will.
Just 3 days ago, I saw someone on my Twitter feed. I think he's building an app called Momentum, and it's basically a network of apps for launching your business. Pretty interesting concept, to be honest. Seems kind of cool. Makes one post on Reddit, first ever post, 110,000 impressions. Do you think he's going to post again? I think he's going to post again. And I think he's going to find a lot of success on the platform. So, you know, you and one other extremely underrated, you and one other person seems to find and push Reddit as this unbelievably underrated platform. And I tend to agree with everything you guys say. And that person's name is Greg Eisenberg. Recently, I remember you putting out something along the lines of you guys, you know, doing some sort of collaboration. What came of that? And, you know, Was it really, really interesting working with this other guy that talks a lot about Reddit as a research vehicle? Did you find you learned a lot from him? And, what was that pathway like? Because it's got to be pretty refreshing to have someone with such a huge following take interest in what you're doing. And did you find that as like confirmation that what you were doing was, along the right lines, or did you just not care at the end of the day? Because you're kind of a market fit badass over here.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, really nice guy. Great experience. Basically, we put out a course. So launching on Reddit, I released it through his distribution channel, basically his community empire. So yeah, you could take it through there. And basically, he DM'd me one day. I'd seen him in my feed a bunch on Twitter. So I'd seen him before. I wasn't super familiar at the time, but I was also just starting with Twitter, so I hadn't really been on Twitter that much. But he DM'd me, and I spoke with him and one of his partners, Jordan. And yeah, we just kind of like talked about how we could potentially work together. And this was one of the things that came up. And we ended up pursuing it together, and it was great. It was awesome. Very thankful to Greg and his team for kind of like giving me the authority by association, if that makes sense, because he's really well respected. And it was a great experience. So I guess like at the end of the day, love when people slide into my DMs. I found Twitter to be extremely useful, especially if you put out like non-commodity information, which I think is like a commodity information might be kind of like a profile. So like you're profiling like Alex Leibowitz or somebody like that. Like this guy just made $100 million and here's how he did it. And there's like a long thread about it. I think those can be extremely useful, but it's really important to add like proprietary information into it, something that only you can bring to the table, for example.
So basically, and people's experiences, right?
Yeah.
Personal experiences applied to the table or background.
Like some people will do like, here's how Pat Walls cracked SEO, and they'll do like a deep dive on like how his SEO strategy, or they'll do that around somebody else, but it'll go deep into the strategy. Like I know Ryan Hashemi, I don't know if you know him, but he worked with like Jubilee, and he works with Start a Story a lot. And he will basically do profiles on people's YouTube channels, and he will tell you why it works, why it doesn't work. But he's a really big like YouTube consultant for like really big channels that are like multi millions. So he's got his own kind of like edge that he's imposing on this case study, if that makes sense. So I found that really worked for Reddit, where I was like putting out information to help people around Reddit, like why this posted well, why this commented well, why this one didn't. And that attracted a lot of people to reach out to me. And that kind of, I guess, built some momentum around this whole Reddit strategy thing. And so that attracted a lot of like bigger accounts, whether it be like 300,000, 400,000 follower accounts, to basically DM me when I only at the time, I think, had like 3,500 Twitter followers. So it was like, I was still relatively small, but all these major accounts were DMing me to either work together or to hire me as a consultant or to do whatever it is, pick my brain more or less, because I have this like unique proprietary information, if that makes sense. So I became like the authority for Reddit, more or less. So I found that could be really useful if you have something that you have like proprietary information around, or you are like, you have an edge around putting out that information on Twitter. People will DM you. So yeah, that was.
Or if you just have something super duper niche that people just, other people have the experience, but maybe they're just not, it's not the type of thing that people think is sexy enough to put on social media. I mean, I don't know why I follow this guy at the end of the day, but I found myself following this guy on Instagram that all he does is make do-it-yourself ice baths. That's it. And
Love
like
it.
Literally no one else is going to be able to, come into that market now and compete, because he has this portfolio of like 400 ice baths that he's made from various parts, whether it's budget, luxury, for this person, for someone with like a Buddhist appeal, a Japanese style house, whatever it is. So I agree with you there, man. I think a lot of people kind of fear putting out their personal experiences, but I think it's those failures and that really just that time eating shit, trying to figure something out that gives some oomph to whatever you're putting out in terms of content. Especially now that shit is almost all AI on the platform. AI platitude, AI platitude, AI platitude, where you can just say, hey, GPT, can you pull from your, memory stores, your large language stores of, the last 6 years of SEO information up till 2022 and make me a post about it? Yeah, it can. But does it have any value without you attributing it to a person you helped, a business you helped, your business, or you putting it into action by showcasing, a blog that did really well? Probably not. So,
Yeah, totally.
I love that answer. One follow-up question on the Greg side of things. Is there anywhere that he ended up kind of filling in your knowledge gaps, did you find? Because obviously this guy's, I find him unbelievable. Like the boring marketer, I had no idea Greg ran it until it was at like 4,000 followers. And I was like, this thing blew up, right? He is so good at creating communities and it's replicatable and they don't need faces, which is one of the hardest things to do because a face, a person is an identity. That's a differentiating factor immediately. And he completely ignores that. So what was the biggest thing you took away from conversing with him and building out this course?
So I would say that the thing that I took away was actually not directly related to the course, but it was actually like a piece of insight that him and his partner, Jordan, kind of gave me, in that I was just starting at the time to do the Reddit strategy as an agency. So I was working with some big newsletters to basically help them with Reddit. And I wasn't having a great time with it. It was just too much stress. It was like I had somebody helping me with a VA, helping me with it that I trained on the Reddit strategy. But honestly, like it was taking too much time away from doing my own thing. And I was always having to be like looking over a shoulder more or less, just because I was like, I want to hit high numbers. You know what I mean? I want to make these people really happy. But with Reddit, it's kind of a gamble because like a post that you make or a comment that you make can go viral and get thousands of subscribers, or it could go nowhere. So it's like you're really just like scattering bets more or less until you get that hit. So that was like really stressful to me. It's not stressful when I'm doing it on my own thing, but it's stressful when I'm working with other people and there's like I need to like hit marks, if that makes sense. So yeah, it caused me a lot of stress, and I was kind of airing that out to them, to Jordan and Greg, and they were like, yeah, like you, what we found is like the best way to do an agency is to only work with Fortune 500 companies. And I was like, you know what, that makes complete sense. So at that point, I basically refunded the companies that I was working with on the newsletter strategy, and I'm like, I shouldn't be doing this. This is not worth my time. I should be going for, if I'm going to do this, companies that have a ton of money and don't really care as much. You know what I mean? Like it's not heavily moving the needle for them. It's like a thing that they really want, but it's not going to make or break their business. So yeah, I kind of like took from that I'm focusing on the wrong part of the market. So I just stopped right then and there. And that was a very insightful piece of information that I got from them that I don't think I would have like heard from anybody else, and probably would have taken me a little while to come to conclusions on my own about. So I'm really appreciative for that piece of advice, even though it was kind of like a passing point, man. In our conversation. It was a passing point, but it really resonated with me.
Dude, honestly, that's resonating with me as well. I think I was mentioning earlier, the biggest problem in the agency game is finding a client that is as passionate as you want them to be about growing their business. Because at the end of the day, you can apply whatever marketing strategy you want that you know is effective, but if they don't have proven systems to close the sale, does it modify revenue? Not really. Do you want to build out a remote sales team that you give to your clients to close sales for them? Not really, because then why aren't you just applying that to one of your own businesses and making more money for it, right? Like purchase something from acquired.com, or, grab a small SaaS company that you think has great market fit and just do the exact same thing, but now you're the driving force behind it. You're the person that can be trusted, or your team's the people that can be trusted. So,
and also, yeah, man, just
I resonate.
One last point on that thing. Basically, as an agency, when you're working with companies, a lot of times they're trying to get away from working with an agency as much as possible, like as quickly as possible. I've been on the other side too, where I've worked at companies where we hired agencies. Basically, it's like, okay, learn what they're doing and then figure out how to apply their strategies internally. Learn whatever you can from them, and then either have somebody internally do it or figure out some way to cut costs on it, because a lot of agencies, they have high margins. So yeah, that is not a road that I found was something that was really worth my time, unless it was going to be like I'm making $30,000 per client or something like that. Like it's not something that's going to build long-term value for me. So it needs to be like substantial. So yeah, that is just not the best long-term sustainable path I found. I mean, some companies do it really well. Like some companies, they have agencies that do really well over time, but it's just, I find that it's easy to get burnout, where I was getting burnout after like weeks doing it, which that might just speak to what I was doing specifically, but it just didn't feel like the best path to go down given, I guess, the things that are laid out in front of me. So I was like, okay, like if I'm going to do this, I'll just do it as a course. If people want to buy this course for their business and teach their VAs or teach their employees or whatever it is, they could take the course. But in terms of doing this for other people, it's not really worth my time. I also had some companies that were like, can you teach my employees how to do this? And unless I was getting paid like 10 grand to do it, I don't want to do it. So yeah, I was just like, they could just kind of like take the course if they want to do it. Otherwise, they could just look at my posts on Twitter or take the free course or something, I guess,
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and activate a VA or activate some person to learn the skill and implement the skill.
Yeah.
And I agree with that, man. I think it took me probably, I've been running agencies for 3 years now. This is my second one. I just started like basically 10 weeks ago at this point. And, I came to the conclusion to launch this agency in order to continue building out a niche skill set, basically. And I think for me, in my eyes, that's more so what an agency is for, unless you are unbelievably savvy at operations and you have an understanding how to build out and basically commoditize your own service internally and make it super repeatable, super trainable, which isn't always the case and it's a huge headache. Then if not that, an agency should be an opportunity for you to build business skill sets that stand the test of time. Basically, it's a huge training ground, right? Because if you can apply this skill set and learn industries relatively quickly, learn the prospecting around industries, how to find people that are interested in the product, qualify intent, yada, 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 then you're going to be able to eventually apply that to a business idea that you're super duper passionate about that has that, extra level of leverage. And that's kind of what I'm in. I think I'm in my transition phase of finding that extra level of leverage. And thank God, every time I read your newsletter, my mind is basically blown that all of these opportunities are out there on a weekly basis. And, maybe that's why it's called Exploding Ideas, because it blows your mind every time you see it. Was that kind of the intent?
Yeah, basically.
Nice. It's good to hear.
But yeah, that's awesome.
I think that's a good spot to wrap up. I do want to give you an opportunity to, maybe chat about, I know you're such a secretive guy when it comes to your other businesses, but if you wanted to chat about some of the other stuff you're doing or working on or literally anything, man, one, I'd love to hear it. And I'm sure, the audience will take interest.
I mean, I guess I'm not looking to necessarily promote them, but just to kind of like let people into my life a little bit more.
Yeah.
Some of my other businesses, obviously you guys know about the vocalpresets.com one. There's also one called Sleepy Sound, which is a network of like a ton of like meditation apps and like sleep apps, which has done relatively well. Hopefully I don't jinx it. And then there's another one called SF Tax Appeal, which is a network of commercial real estate tax appeal businesses in which I leverage SEO as my edge. That is like, I found there was an opportunity in that market and I just like went hard at it and went to like number 1 to 3 on Google across a bunch of different states across the United States. And it's a lead generator. So basically building owners will contact me and they'll want to work together. And then I have law firms that I work with that they basically buy the leads and they pursue them, but it's high ticket. And so those are the 3 that I'm working on right now. So the meditation one, the tax appeal one, and then Exploding Ideas. And yeah, it's kind of
basically almost white label at that point, eh? Where you're outsourcing the work to like trusted people. You're providing leads, but you're the front facing brand, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So
I'd like to
very
build it
similar
into
to real
something
estate
bigger,
lead generation, where you have a landing page, you might handle the calls, and then you'll feed the leads to someone. So that's cool.
The idea is to kind of like use it to test the market for a few years and then potentially build my own business around it where it's like all vertically integrated, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we'll see where it goes. But
No, that's super exciting. And, it's a shame we didn't get too much more into SEO, but you did mention someone that's a great resource for that, right? Was it Paul Wallace or Walls?
Pat Walls.
Pat Walls. Pat Walls.
He put out a course on it, but he historically has not talked much about SEO because his YouTube channel is all profiles on people. And that's what his website is too. It's like how people started their businesses. So he did one just recently on Alex Leibowitz. I think that's his name, from Morning Brew, one of the founders. He released that video like a day ago. They're all like super high quality, and it's like a multi-million-dollar business that's just like an online native business that puts out case studies, which I had always followed him because of his SEO. Like, I use Ahrefs, which is an SEO tool, and basically I put his website in there, and it's like it ranks really well on Google. His domain rating is really high. He has a ton of backlinks, like all these like kind of like SEO terms.
He's like killing it. You qualified his skill set by plugging his website.
I've always looked at his website as being like amazing, because what he's done on that website, it is amazing. And I think that that's the most impressive part of his business, to be completely honest. Personally, I think that his SEO strategy is so amazing. And the fact that everybody isn't buying his course, I think is like kind of like shocking. But I guess maybe it just goes into the research that I've done on his business and like how he's kind of like navigated it. He's probably one of the best people that I've identified at SEO, just in terms of like what he's done on his own business. He's not really trying to, his course, he's selling it. He just started, but like he's already like had an amazing SEO for the past like few years. And
wow,
he's one of the most impressive people when it comes to SEO that I've identified. And so I instantly bought his course. I was like, I need to buy this course. So yeah, anyways, he's amazing. If you're interested in SEO, I'd buy his course, honestly, because I found it extremely like, it's really changed my mindset a lot. I've like consulted with a lot of different SEO people. I've already also done SEO on my own. I've gone to number 1 on Google. I've gone like top 3 or whatever, but his perspective is so like, he treats it like a science, not like a black box. A lot of people look at SEO like they're kind of like throwing shit at the wall and they're just trying to see what sticks. They don't know. But he's really got it down to like a science, where it's like you just go through this iterative process that he's developed over a time period, and you just kind of double down on what's granting you results. And it really resonated with me. I find it to be the best like $250 or whatever that I've spent in the last like 6 months in terms of learning.
Wow. Well, let that be a testament to Eric as an individual. I give him an opportunity to plug himself, and he goes on a 3-minute tangent about another person's course. So that's fucking awesome, man. Yeah, I think you're a great character. I appreciate you coming on. Everyone, definitely check out Eric's stuff on Twitter. He'll probably be asking you for a ton of advice on his YouTube channel right around now that he's getting going.
That's funny.
Also check that out. The man loves doing his market research live on Twitter, and I would recommend you guys doing it yourself as well. And yeah, I think we'll wrap up there. Thanks so much again, Eric.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate this. This was awesome.